The Galactic Council chamber was silent as the massive screen lit up. Stars shifted slowly across it, showing a small blue planet far from the core worlds. Earth. Most council members barely looked interested. They had seen thousands of young species rise and fall. Humans were just another name on a long list. Still, reports had arrived, and protocol demanded attention. The High Speaker raised one thin hand, and the recording began. It showed human soldiers moving through smoke and fire. Fast, precise, deadly. The label on the screen read, Human Special Forces. Several council members leaned forward. Others laughed quietly. The footage showed humans wearing dark armor, faces hidden, weapons firing with perfect timing. Alien enemies fell quickly. The council's military advisors nodded. This was something they understood. Every species had elite warriors. Small in number. Expensive to train. Easy to counter once studied. The council had beaten such forces many times before. The High Speaker turned to the analysts and asked a simple question. Is this their best? The answer came quickly. Yes. These are the humans' finest fighters. The High Speaker relaxed. Fear faded from the chamber. The council began to talk over one another. They discussed tactics, countermeasures, and future plans. Human special forces relied on surprise, speed, and teamwork. The council had technology that could break all three. Sensors could see through smoke. Shields could stop human weapons. Drones could overwhelm small elite teams. One general clicked his claws together and said, "If these are their strongest, the war will be short." Laughter echoed again. The vote was nearly decided already. No one noticed the smaller data file waiting at the bottom of the report. It was marked as low priority. It showed long lines of human soldiers training in open fields. No advanced armor. No dramatic music. Just people running, marching, lifting, and learning. The file title was simple: Regular Infantry Training. The council's systems did not highlight it. The analysts did not open it. The council did not ask about it. Their eyes were locked on the elites, and that was their first mistake. Far from the council chamber, a human observation ship drifted near the border of council space. It was small and quiet, painted in dull gray. No weapons were visible. Inside, officers watched council communications in silence. They did not smile. They did not speak much. They had expected this reaction. Humans had learned long ago that powerful enemies often feared only the sharpest knife, not the hand holding it. The ship recorded everything and sent the data back to Earth. Back in the council chamber, a junior analyst shifted nervously. She had noticed something strange. The Special Forces videos were impressive, but the numbers were small. Too small. She raised a hand slightly, unsure if she should speak. The High Speaker was already preparing to end the session. The analyst cleared her throat. "Honored ones," she said carefully, "the humans also have a large standing force. They're regular soldiers." Her words were cut off by a senior general. "Every species has regular soldiers," he said. "They break first. Elites win wars." The chamber agreed. The analyst lowered her eyes and said nothing more. The council voted. Humans would be classified as a limited threat. Their special forces would be targeted and neutralized early. The rest would fall apart soon after. Fleets would be prepared, but only a fraction of full strength. There was no need to waste resources. The High Speaker declared the matter settled. The screen went dark. The stars disappeared. The fate of billions had just been decided in a few calm minutes. On Earth, the same decision reached human command hours later. Generals and planners gathered in a quiet room. They listened as the report was read aloud. When it ended, no one looked surprised. One officer nodded slowly. "They are watching the elites," he said. Another replied, "They always do." A third officer looked at a screen showing rows of ordinary soldiers eating, laughing, cleaning weapons, and resting after long drills. "Then they will miss the real danger," she said. Human regular soldiers did not look impressive. They did not wear black armor. They did not move like shadows. They trained in daylight. They trained in rain, heat, and cold. They trained to hold lines, to advance under fire, to keep moving when tired and afraid. They trained to fight together for weeks, months, even years. They were not taught to win quickly. They were taught to endure. That lesson was written into every drill and every march. Back in Council space, preparations continued. Shipyards built weapons meant to hunt elite teams. Intelligence units studied special forces tactics again and again. Simulations showed quick victories. Confidence grew. Fear faded completely. Only one old council member remained silent. He had lived through many wars. He had seen strong empires fall. He stared at the empty screen and felt something was wrong, but even he could not explain it. The council had data. The council had power. Surely that was enough. As the first council fleets moved toward the border, the human observation ship pulled back and vanished into deep space. Its mission was complete. The mistake had been made. The council believed they understood humanity. They believed the threat had a name and a small number attached to it. They did not know that the real strength of humans did not wear special markings. It marched in plain uniforms. It followed orders without glory. And it was already moving. The war had not begun yet. No shots had been fired between the great powers. But the path was set. The council had chosen what to fear and what to ignore. In the silence before the storm, that choice would become their greatest regret. The Galactic Council believed they were prepared. That belief settled deep into their plans and poisoned every decision that followed. In the days after the vote, intelligence halls filled with moving lights and sharp voices. Screens replayed the same combat clips again and again. Human special forces struck fast, disappeared faster, and left broken enemies behind. Council analysts slowed the footage, marked movement patterns, and highlighted weaknesses. They felt smart. They felt in control. Every new simulation ended the same way. The elites were neutralized. The humans collapsed. Confidence spread like a comfortable lie. The council ordered long-range sensors to focus only on elite human signals. Heat patterns, encrypted bursts, stealth ship signatures, all of it was tracked. Anything that did not match special forces profiles was filtered out. Entire human troop movements vanished from council awareness without anyone realizing it. The systems worked as designed. That was the problem. The council had built eyes that could see sharp blades but were blind to steady hands. On the outer edges of human space, training intensified. Not for special forces, but for the regulars. Camps expanded. Supply lines stretched. Transport ships moved night and day. Ordinary soldiers loaded equipment, checked rifles, and listened to quiet briefings. There were no speeches about glory. No talk of heroes. Commanders spoke about distance, endurance, and holding ground. The soldiers listened and nodded. This was not new to them. They had trained for this kind of war their whole lives. Back in council space, a senior strategist presented the final battle plan. He explained how elite human units would be lured into traps. Drones would cut off escape routes. Energy nets would lock them down. The chamber approved every step. When a junior officer asked about the size of the human standing army, the strategist answered calmly. Large forces move slow. They need morale. Break the elites and the rest will scatter. No one challenged him. History, as they understood it, supported his claim. The first council fleets moved closer to the border. They did not hide. They wanted humans to see them. Fear was a weapon too. The ships were sleek and powerful, covered in glowing shields and long-range cannons. Their commanders felt pride as they advanced. This was a controlled operation, not a desperate war. They expected resistance, but only from small, skilled teams. That made everything easier. Aboard a human command ship far away, officers watched the same movements. They saw the fleets. They heard the confidence in intercepted council transmissions. No panic spread through the room. Instead, orders went out quietly. Timetables shifted. Routes changed. The regular forces adjusted without complaint. Soldiers boarded transports and checked straps. They did not know the Council's plans in detail, but they knew one thing. When the enemy believed the wrong story, patience was the strongest weapon. The Council began its first probing actions. Drones crossed the border and scanned human space. They searched for stealth signatures and elite markers. They found nothing unusual. The reports pleased the admirals. "They are hiding," one said. "They know they are outmatched." The truth was simpler. Humans were not hiding. They were moving openly, just not in ways the Council thought mattered. Long lines of transport ships traveled under civilian codes. Cargo containers held more than supplies. But the Council systems ignored them. One Council intelligence officer noticed strange delays in human logistics data. Ship traffic was heavier than expected. Training grounds were emptying instead of filling. She flagged the anomaly. The response came quickly. False pattern. Normal pre-war panic. The file was closed. The officer stared at her screen, uneasy, then returned to her assigned work. Doubt had no place in the plan now. As days passed, the Council grew bolder. They sent strike teams to hunt Special Forces bases. Most of the locations were old or empty. The few engagements they found were confusing. Human elites withdrew instead of fighting. Council commanders called it weakness. They did not understand it was permission. Each retreat pulled Council forces deeper into prepared zones. Each chase taught humans more about Council response times and weapon limits. Among human regular units, discipline tightened. Soldiers marched longer hours. They learned terrain maps of alien worlds. They practiced holding positions under heavy fire. Medics trained to work while moving. Engineers rehearsed building defenses in minutes. Everything was slow and steady. No dramatic victories. No sudden strikes. Just preparation layered on preparation. This kind of work never impressed outsiders. It never made exciting footage. That was why the Council never saw it coming. In the Council chamber, the High Speaker received daily updates. All were positive. No major human response. No large fleet movements. No mass panic. He concluded that humanity was paralyzed by fear. The Council's approach was working. He announced that the next phase would begin soon. A limited invasion. Enough force to break resistance, not enough to strain resources. Applause filled the hall. Only one voice remained silent. The old Council member watched the reports and felt the same quiet warning growing stronger. Wars were not won by what was seen, he knew, but by what was ignored. He asked for a full report on human ground forces. The request was delayed, then forgotten. Far away, the first human regular units reached their forward positions. They dug in calmly. Weapons were checked. Lines were formed. No one celebrated. No one doubted. They were not waiting for permission to be brave. They were waiting for the enemy to make the next mistake. And the Council, still watching the wrong enemy, was about to do exactly that. The first battle did not begin with a grand announcement or a massive fleet clash. It started quietly, on a forgotten border world that held little value. The Galactic Council chose it on purpose. They wanted a controlled test, a small conflict that would draw out human special forces. The planet had thin atmosphere, rough terrain, and a single human outpost. Council commanders believed elites would rush to defend it. They prepared traps, energy nets, and precision weapons meant for fast, elite targets. Everything was planned carefully. Nothing, in their minds, could go wrong. Council ships arrived in orbit without resistance. Their scanners searched for stealth signatures and elite markers. They found none. This pleased the commanders. They assumed the humans were hiding underground or preparing an ambush. Strike forces were deployed in small numbers. They were confident and eager. This was supposed to be easy. The Council wanted proof, not destruction. A quick victory would send a message to the rest of humanity. On the surface, the human outpost did not look important. Low buildings. Basic defenses. No signs of elite units. Inside, regular human soldiers prepared calmly. They had received their orders days ago. Hold the position. Delay the enemy. Learn how they fight. No heroics. No retreat unless ordered. The soldiers moved with practiced efficiency. Weapons were checked. Communication lines were tested. Each person knew their role. Fear was present, but it was controlled. This was what they had trained for. When the first Council ground units advanced, they expected chaos. They expected humans to panic or attempt a desperate strike. Instead, they were met by steady fire. Human soldiers fired in controlled bursts, falling back in measured steps. They used the terrain well, forcing Council units into narrow paths. Energy shields flared and flickered under constant pressure. The Council forces paused, surprised. This was not how regular troops were supposed to fight. Council commanders ordered an aggressive push. Elite hunting drones moved ahead, searching for fast-moving targets. They found none. Human soldiers did not rush. They held their lines, shifted positions, and kept firing. When Council units tried to flank, they met prepared defenses. Mines exploded. Traps activated. The humans had turned the rough terrain into a weapon. The battle slowed, and that worried the Council. Speed was supposed to be their advantage. In orbit, Council officers watched the engagement grow longer than expected. Casualties were rising on their side, slowly but steadily. Human losses were present too, but the lines did not break. There was no sign of panic. No elite counterattack. One officer suggested pulling back and reassessing. The commander refused. "These are regulars," he said. "They cannot hold forever." The order to advance was repeated. On the ground, human medics moved through smoke and dust. Wounded soldiers were treated quickly and sent back if they could still fight. Others were carried away. No one shouted. No one begged. The soldiers trusted each other and the plan. They had been taught that holding ground was sometimes more important than winning quickly. Each minute the Council stayed engaged, humans learned more. Weapon patterns. Shield limits. Command response times. Every detail was noted. As the battle dragged on, Council commanders grew frustrated. Their specialized tools were useless. Energy nets caught nothing. Precision strikes hit empty ground. The humans were not fast, but they were everywhere. They moved as a single body, bending but not breaking. When night fell, the Council attempted a final push. They expected darkness to favor their technology. Instead, human flares lit the battlefield, turning night into harsh white light. The advance failed. After many hours, the Council ordered a withdrawal. It was not a retreat, they claimed, but a tactical pause. They had learned enough. The planet was not worth further losses. Council ships lifted off, leaving behind smoke, damaged equipment, and unanswered questions. The human outpost still stood, scarred, damaged, but standing. In the Council fleet, reports were written carefully. The engagement was labeled inconclusive. Losses were explained away as unexpected terrain difficulties. The commanders assured their superiors that future battles would be different. They emphasized again that no special forces had appeared. This, they said, proved their theory. The humans were holding back their elites. That meant fear. That meant weakness. On Earth, the report was read in silence. Human commanders focused on the details, not the outcome. Regular troops had held against superior technology. Communication had remained intact. Morale had stayed strong. The plan was working. One general nodded slowly. "They tested us," he said. "And they learned the wrong lesson." On the battlefield itself, human soldiers repaired defenses and buried their dead. There were no celebrations. Only quiet determination. They knew this was just the beginning. The Council believed they had faced a minor resistance. In truth, they had just fought their first battle against human regulars. And for the first time, the Council felt something new in their calculations. Uncertainty. The battle report reached the Galactic Council faster than expected. It was supposed to be routine, a short summary confirming what everyone already believed. Instead, the data caused silence. Lost numbers scrolled across the chamber screens. They were not catastrophic, but they were wrong. Too high. Too uneven. Council forces had lost ships, armor units, and trained soldiers to what was labeled as human regular troops. No elite signatures were detected. No special tactics were recorded. The numbers did not match the theory the Council trusted. The High Speaker studied the report carefully. He read it twice. Then a third time. The words did not change. The result was listed as inconclusive, but the tone beneath the text was uneasy. Council commanders had expected speed and control. What they found instead was resistance that did not break. The High Speaker looked around the chamber. Faces that once showed confidence now showed confusion. A few council members shifted in their seats. A military general stood and spoke loudly to restore order. He explained the losses as environmental factors and poor initial positioning. The planet, he said, had worked against them. The humans had been lucky. He insisted that the next engagement would be decisive once proper adjustments were made. Some council members nodded, eager to believe him. Others stayed quiet. The report showed something no one wanted to say aloud. The humans had not reacted like a weak force. An analyst brought up a comparison chart. It showed previous wars against similar developing species. In every case, once elite units were identified and countered, resistance collapsed quickly. The chart stopped at the human conflict. There was no collapse. Only a flat line of continued resistance. The analyst hesitated, then spoke. The regular units maintained formation longer than expected. The chamber murmured. Someone asked how long. The answer came softly. Until ordered otherwise. That answer echoed longer than it should have. The idea that regular soldiers would hold without elite support unsettled many council members. Discipline like that was rare outside core species armies. The High Speaker felt a slow tightening in his chest. He ordered more data. Footage from the ground battle filled the screen. Human soldiers advanced and withdrew in calm patterns. They covered each other. They adjusted positions under fire. They did not run. They did not chase. They endured. One council member finally voiced what others were thinking. If these are their regulars, he said, what are the rest? The question hung in the air. No one answered immediately. The senior general dismissed it. Elites are still the key, he insisted. The humans are hiding them. That means fear. His words were strong, but his tone was not. Far away, Human Command reviewed the same footage. They did not focus on council losses. They focused on time. How long the enemy stayed engaged. How quickly they adapted. How soon they withdrew. Every second confirmed human expectations. The council was still fighting the wrong enemy. Orders were sent quietly. Additional regular units were moved forward. Supply chains were reinforced. Nothing flashy. Nothing dramatic. Just steady preparation. Back in the council chamber, tension grew. A request was made to increase fleet strength. It was denied. The High Speaker did not want to appear weak or uncertain. The official position remained unchanged. Humans were a limited threat. Special forces were the real danger. However, a subtle shift occurred. Defensive systems near council borders were quietly reinforced. Patrols increased. Fear had entered the room, even if no one named it. A junior council member reviewed casualty reports again and noticed something troubling. Human losses did not spike during the battle's hardest moments. They stayed steady. That suggested strong medical support and unit cohesion. Regular troops should have broken under pressure. These did not. She prepared a report highlighting the anomaly. It was marked for later review. Later never came. As more data arrived from probes and scouts, a pattern formed. Human movements were slow but constant. There were no sudden surges. No panic signals. No mass retreats. The council could not decide whether this meant weakness or strength. Uncertainty crept into every discussion. Meetings grew longer. Voices grew sharper. The High Speaker began to feel the weight of leadership more heavily than before. An old council member finally spoke again after long silence. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "We are not frightening them," he said. "And that should frighten us." Some dismissed his words as caution born from age. Others felt the truth in them. The chamber divided not by votes, but by doubt. On the border world, human soldiers rotated positions. Fresh units replaced the tired ones. The outpost was reinforced, not abandoned. Engineers improved defenses. Supplies arrived on schedule. Everything looked ordinary. That was the most dangerous part. The council expected drama. Humans offered none. When the High Speaker ended the session, no applause followed. The council had faced many enemies before. None had made them question their own understanding so quickly. As the chamber lights dimmed, one thought lingered in many minds. They had prepared to fight human special forces. But what they had met was something else entirely. And whatever it was, it had not even begun to push back yet. The prisoner was brought into the council interrogation chamber without chains. That alone unsettled the observers. He was a human regular soldier, captured during a brief skirmish after the first battle. His uniform was worn and stained, but he walked steadily. He did not look angry or afraid. He simply waited. The council interrogators watched him closely, searching for signs of elite conditioning or hidden arrogance. They found neither. He looked ordinary. That made them uncomfortable. The questioning began softly. They asked about human special forces. The soldier answered without hesitation. He described their training, their missions, and their purpose. The council listeners nodded. This matched what they already believed. Elites were sharp tools meant for precision tasks. Then an interrogator asked the question that mattered most. Why were they not deployed? The soldier looked up and gave a small, almost tired smile. "Because this wasn't that kind of fight," he said. The council pressed him. They wanted to know what kind of fight it was. The soldier spoke simply, choosing his words carefully. "Special forces are for breaking things fast," he said. "Regulars are for holding, pushing, and not stopping." The translators struggled with the phrasing, but the meaning was clear enough. Some council members shifted in their seats. This was not how they defined warfare. They asked about human doctrine. The soldier explained that humans expected wars to last. They planned for loss. They planned for exhaustion. "We train to keep moving when we don't want to," he said. "When we are scared. When we are tired." He paused, then added, "Especially then." The chamber grew quiet. No one interrupted him. A council officer asked if the regular troops knew they were being used as shields for elites. The soldier frowned slightly. "That's not how it works," he said. "Everyone has a job. Ours is to be there. Every day. Until it's done." He spoke without pride or complaint. It was a statement of fact. That unsettled the council more than anger ever could. The interrogation continued. The council asked about numbers. The soldier answered honestly. There were many. More than the council had estimated. He spoke of rotation schedules, supply systems, and layered command. He explained how units replaced each other to avoid collapse. The council had faced large armies before, but not ones that planned so carefully for endurance. One interrogator asked the final question. "What happens when the regulars fail?" The soldier met his gaze calmly. "Then the elites step in," he said. "Not to save us. To finish it." The words struck hard. The idea that special forces existed not as the main weapon, but as a final pressure, challenged everything the council believed. The session ended early. The prisoner was taken away. No punishment followed. The council needed time to process what they had heard. The High Speaker ordered a review of human military structure. Data flooded the chamber. Numbers climbed higher and higher. Training facilities. reserve forces, civilian support systems. The picture that formed was vast and patient. Some council members argued that the prisoner was lying. Others believed he was exaggerating. But the battle data supported his words. Human regular units did not retreat when expected. They rotated. They reinforced. They adapted. The council began to understand a painful truth. They were not facing a force built to win quickly. They were facing one built to outlast. On Earth, Human Command received notice of the captured soldier. They reviewed his service record. He was average by every measure. No special commendations. No elite background. A commander nodded. "Good," she said. "He'll tell them exactly what they need to hear." The council chamber filled again for an emergency session. Voices were louder now. Fear was no longer hidden. Proposals ranged from full invasion to immediate negotiation. The High Speaker struggled to maintain control. The old council member spoke once more. "We misunderstood their war," he said. "And now they are fighting it exactly as they want." Beyond the council's borders, human regular forces continued to advance slowly. They built supply hubs. They secured routes. They did not rush toward victory. They prepared for time, for pressure, for inevitability. The truth was clear now, even if the council did not want to accept it. Human special forces were never meant to be the main threat. They were the closing hand. The real war was being fought by the regulars. And it had only just begun. The emergency session ended with a decision that could not be taken back. The Galactic Council declared full mobilization. Pride, fear, and anger mixed into a single dangerous resolve. They would not be patient anymore. They would not test or probe. They would crush. Orders spread across council space, activating fleets that had not moved in generations. Shipyards glowed as massive war vessels powered up. Commanders were given authority to use their strongest weapons. The message was clear. The humans had gone too far, and the council would end the war quickly and completely. Council media announced the operation as a final action. Citizens were told the enemy was weak but stubborn. Victory would be swift. Behind closed doors, the tone was different. Admirals demanded more ships. Generals asked for more troops. Defensive systems were pulled from distant sectors and rushed toward the human front. The council was sending everything, not because they felt confident, but because doubt had begun to rot their certainty from the inside. The fleets moved as one. Endless lines of warships crossed into contested space, their shields bright against the stars. The council expected a reaction. Panic. Desperate elite strikes. A dramatic human response. None came. Human space remained calm. Traffic continued. Communications stayed steady. This silence made council commanders uneasy, but they pressed forward. Overwhelming force would solve the problem. It always had before. On Earth, the sight of the approaching armada was met without shock. Human Command had planned for this moment. Orders were issued in quiet, precise tones. Regular units were repositioned. Defensive lines thickened. Supply convoys increased. Nothing was rushed. The human response was not to match the council's speed, but to absorb it. Soldiers prepared for long engagements. They checked equipment and shared brief words with each other. Fear existed, but it did not rule them. The first major clash began near a fortified human corridor. Council fleets opened fire from extreme range, confident in their superior power. Space lit up with energy beams and explosions. Human ships did not charge. They held position, using layered defenses and careful movement. Losses occurred on both sides, but the human lines did not break. The council expected collapse. Instead, they met resistance that bent and returned to shape. Council ground forces followed, landing on multiple worlds at once. This time, they came in massive numbers. They believed sheer force would overwhelm the regulars. Battles erupted across continents. Cities burned. Plains turned into fields of fire. Human regular soldiers fought everywhere. They did not seek decisive victories. They delayed. They blocked. They forced the Council to fight for every step forward. Time stretched. Supplies drained. Momentum slowed. Council commanders grew angry. They ordered faster advances. Losses increased. Human units fell back in good order, then reappeared elsewhere. Fresh troops replaced the wounded. Defensive positions multiplied. The Council realized too late that they were being drawn into a grinding war. This was not a failure of strength. It was a failure of understanding. Humans were not trying to stop the invasion outright. They were letting it exhaust itself. In orbit, Council fleets began to feel pressure. Human ships rotated in and out of combat zones. Damaged vessels withdrew and returned repaired. Council ships stayed engaged longer, burning fuel and crew endurance. The imbalance grew slowly, but it grew. Admirals demanded results. None came quickly. Frustration turned into desperation. A Council general suggested deploying their most destructive weapons. The proposal shocked even his peers. Such weapons would leave worlds dead for centuries. The High Speaker hesitated, then approved limited use. The strike was devastating. A human defensive zone vanished in fire. For a moment, the Council felt relief. Then reports came in. Human forces did not retreat. They adapted routes. They filled the gap. The line held again. Among human soldiers, the destruction hardened resolve. They did not cry out for vengeance. They tightened formations. Commanders reminded them of the plan. Hold. Endure. Advance when ordered. The regulars trusted their leaders, and their leaders trusted time. As the battles continued, Council losses mounted faster than expected. Supply chains stretched thin. Morale wavered. The belief in a quick end faded. The Council had sent everything, yet the humans still had more regular forces rotating into the fight. That realization struck like a blow. In the Council chamber, silence returned, heavier than before. They had committed fully, and still the humans stood. The High Speaker looked at the tactical maps and understood the truth at last. This war was no longer about power. It was about endurance. And in that kind of war, the Council was no longer sure they were the stronger side. The shift was subtle at first, so subtle that many Council commanders did not recognize it. 4 days, human regular forces had focused on holding and delaying. Then, without any dramatic signal, they began to move forward. Not in sudden charges or reckless assaults, but in steady, measured advances. Lines that had once only resisted now pushed back. Positions the Council believed secure were challenged quietly. The regulars were no longer just enduring the invasion. They were shaping it. Council scouts reported unusual movements. Human units were advancing under heavy fire without breaking formation. When one unit slowed, another replaced it. There was no confusion, no rush. Council commanders assumed this was a desperate gamble. They ordered concentrated strikes to stop the advance. The strikes landed hard, tearing through terrain and defenses. When the smoke cleared, human lines had shifted, not vanished. The advance continued. On the ground, human soldiers moved with a calm that unsettled their enemies. They did not shout victory cries. They did not chase retreating forces. They took ground, secured it, and prepared for the next push. Engineers followed close behind, building defenses where moments before there had been none. Medics moved through the lines, keeping soldiers alive and fighting. The advance was not fast, but it was relentless. Council ground commanders struggled to respond. Their doctrine favored decisive strikes and quick wins. Against human regulars, those strikes only slowed the movement. Each time the Council committed forces to stop one advance, another push appeared elsewhere. The battlefield stretched wider, thinner. Resources were pulled in too many directions. The humans controlled the pace, and the Council felt it slipping away. In space, the pattern repeated. Human fleets began pressing outward from defensive zones. They did not seek to destroy Council ships outright. They forced them to maneuver, to burn fuel, to maintain shields longer than planned. Council crews grew exhausted. Human ships rotated crews and vessels with precise timing. The advantage was not firepower. It was endurance and organization. A council admiral ordered a full counterattack, hoping to shock the humans back into defense. The attack was powerful and well coordinated. For a moment, human lines bent dangerously. Losses mounted. Then reserves moved in exactly where needed. The line stabilized. When the council attack ended, human forces were still there. Worse, they were closer than before. Among council soldiers, morale began to crack. They had been told the humans were nearly broken. Instead, they faced an enemy that seemed tireless. Every fallen human was replaced. Every destroyed position rebuilt. Rumors spread. Some said humans did not fear death. Others said their commanders did not care about losses. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. Humans planned for losses. They expected them. And they had prepared enough people to continue regardless. In the council chamber, arguments turned into accusations. Admirals blamed generals. Generals blamed intelligence. Intelligence blamed faulty assumptions. The High Speaker struggled to maintain unity. Reports showed human regulars now controlling key corridors and supply routes. The Council had entered the war with overwhelming force. Now, that force was being slowly pushed back. On Earth, human command watched the advance carefully. They did not celebrate. They adjusted. Orders were refined. Units were rotated to prevent exhaustion. The advance continued only where it could be sustained. This was not a charge toward victory. It was pressure applied evenly, without pause. The kind of pressure that eventually breaks even the strongest structures. The old council member watched the maps in silence. He saw what others did not want to admit. The humans had reached the phase of war they understood best. The regulars were advancing, and they would not stop unless forced. He spoke quietly to the High Speaker. "This is no longer an invasion," he said. "This is a withdrawal that has not been ordered yet." As days turned into weeks, the Council's position worsened. Supply shortages appeared. Reinforcements arrived too late or in the wrong places. Human advances cut routes apart piece by piece. The Council tried to regroup, but the humans gave them no time. There was no single battle to win. No decisive strike to deliver. Only constant movement forward. On one shattered world, a council commander ordered a final stand. Human regulars surrounded the position slowly. They did not rush. They waited, advanced, and waited again. The commander realized then that the humans were not angry. They were not desperate. They were patient. That realization broke him before the final assault even began. By the end of the phase, the truth was impossible to ignore. The Council had prepared to fight human special forces. Instead, they were being defeated by human regulars doing exactly what they were trained to do. Advance. Hold. Replace. Continue. And the war was far from over. The Council had assumed the humans' regular troops were all they needed to face. They were wrong. As weeks of grinding battles stretched on, the human special forces finally revealed themselves. They did not arrive in dramatic waves or stealth ambushes. They appeared calmly, moving into positions prepared long ago. The regulars had cleared paths, forced council forces into predictable patterns, and created the openings that the special forces now used. They struck at the command centers, supply lines, and key communication nodes, not at soldiers on the front line. The effect was devastating. Council commanders were unprepared. They had been fighting what they believed to be the main threat, the regular soldiers, and now the real threat emerged in ways they had not anticipated. Energy barriers faltered under precise strikes. Shield generators exploded. Entire command towers went dark in moments. The special forces moved swiftly, eliminating leadership and support units without warning. Council officers struggled to issue orders as their communication systems collapsed. Panic began to spread where confidence had once existed. On the battlefield, human regulars continued their advance. They did not wait for the special forces to finish their work, but their path had been made safer and more efficient. Regular units moved with discipline and focus, clearing resistance and securing strategic locations. Supplies and reinforcements followed, arriving just as the special forces disrupted the Council's ability to respond. Coordination between regulars and elites was seamless, though the Council had never imagined they would act together so efficiently. Council generals tried to rally their forces. They called for counterattacks, but the human strategy anticipated every move. Elites had identified weak points and striking positions. Regular troops held lines, forcing Council units into traps. Specialized weapons meant to overwhelm groups failed repeatedly. Every attack was met with resistance from the regulars, then dismantled by the special forces. The Council had no room to breathe. Every plan seemed to fail before it even began. In space, human fleets mirrored the ground strategy. Special forces ships targeted command vessels and supply convoys. Regular human ships pressed forward steadily, holding lines and pushing back Council fleets. The Council's overwhelming numbers began to falter under precision strikes and relentless pressure. Systems collapsed one after another. Confidence crumbled as officers realized the humans were not just enduring, they were dictating the pace and location of every engagement. Council troops on planetary surfaces felt the impact immediately. Supply drops failed. Communication grids went dark. Energy fields collapsed. Chaos spread among units previously confident in their superiority. Soldiers abandoned positions, some in fear, some to regroup. The humans did not chase them. The special forces struck at the heart of their command and support. Panic grew faster than the advance could be contained. Back on Earth, human command watched the chaos unfold with calm attention. They had trained for this moment. Every maneuver, every delay, and every positioning had been calculated. Regulars created opportunities. Special forces struck precisely at those opportunities. Nothing was wasted. Losses were anticipated and replaced. The Council had committed everything, but humanity had committed strategy and patience. In the Council chamber, confusion turned into terror. Advisors argued, shouted, and pointed fingers. High-ranking officials demanded explanations. None could be found. Reports came in too slowly, contradicting each other. Maps flashed with lost positions. Communications went down. The High Speaker felt the weight of his mistake more heavily than ever. The humans had forced a scenario the Council had not thought possible: relentless, coordinated, and unyielding pressure from forces they had underestimated. The special forces did not linger in one spot. They moved fluidly from strike to strike. Command nodes were dismantled. Supply routes were cut. High-value officers were neutralized. The Council attempted to respond with massed forces, but every attempt was anticipated and countered. Confidence gave way to fear. Orders were ignored, changed, or lost entirely in the confusion. The humans had rewritten the battlefield in a way the Council could not comprehend. Regular human units advanced steadily in the wake of the special forces. The soldiers did not rush. They did not celebrate. They secured what had been cleared, repaired what was broken, and continued their push. Each advance stretched the Council's lines thinner, creating more openings for the special forces to strike. Every victory, no matter how small, reinforced human control over the battle's tempo. By the time the special forces completed their first series of strikes, entire sectors of Council control had collapsed. Commanders fled or were incapacitated. Supply chains were destroyed. Troop morale plummeted. The Council's overwhelming force was rendered ineffective, not by superior numbers, but by precision, patience, and coordination between regulars and elites. The war had shifted irreversibly. As silence fell over the Council chamber, the High Speaker realized the full scale of their error. They had prepared for human special forces as if they were the main weapon, ignoring the regulars. The regulars held lines, pushed forward, and created the conditions for the true power of humanity to emerge. The special forces had done what no Council plan could anticipate. The galaxy had never seen a species combine patience, endurance, and precision in this way. And for the first time, the Council understood the truth. They had underestimated humanity entirely. The special forces had arrived, but they were only part of a much larger, unstoppable strategy. The war was no longer just a test. It was a demonstration of the humans' full capability. Every commander, soldier, and advisor felt it deep in their core. The humans were not fighting for survival alone. They were showing the galaxy why fear of humanity was not a choice, but a necessity. The Council had never imagined it would come to this. After months of relentless battles, supply shortages, and shattered command structures, their confidence was gone. They had sent everything against humanity, every fleet, every soldier, every weapon of destruction, and yet the humans still advanced. The regular forces held lines and pushed forward steadily, while special forces struck precisely at command centers, supply chains, and critical infrastructure. Council officers watched helplessly as their plans crumbled before their eyes. Desperation spread through the chamber like wildfire. The High Speaker called an emergency session, one unlike any other in recorded history. The chamber was silent, heavy with tension. Advisors, generals, and analysts spoke in hushed, fearful tones. Every report showed the same truth. The humans were winning. Not through sudden chaos or overwhelming violence, but through endurance, strategy, and coordination. Every Council attempt to respond was anticipated and neutralized. The regular soldiers advanced, the special forces struck, and the galaxy watched in disbelief. A proposal to escalate further was made by a desperate general. He demanded the use of planetary annihilation weapons, massive bombardments, anything to halt the human advance. The High Speaker paused. He knew such a decision would destroy entire worlds, civilian populations, and the Council's credibility forever. But even as the suggestion was made, he realized that these extreme measures might not even succeed. The humans had planned for loss. They had expected destruction. They had endured before, and they would endure again. Communication lines were hastily prepared and sent toward human command. The message was clear. The Council wanted to negotiate peace. They offered concessions, territorial promises, and even tribute. For the first time, humanity listened. No immediate response came, only calm deliberation within their command rooms. Human commanders discussed the terms quietly, weighing the situation carefully. The Council had assumed humans would beg, would yield under pressure, but humanity had never reacted like other species. They waited, they calculated, they decided. Finally, a human representative responded. The message was simple, calm, and unnerving in its clarity. Humanity had no need to beg, no desire to negotiate from weakness. They were not stopping the war to save themselves. They were stopping it because the Council had finally learned the lesson. Humanity demanded recognition of their strength and a guarantee that the Council would never underestimate regular humans again. It was not surrender. It was an assessment of reality. The Council chamber erupted into arguments. Some saw it as a relief, a chance to save what remained of their fleets and people. Others saw it as humiliation. After months of confident strategy and overwhelming force, they were being lectured by humans on what war truly meant. The High Speaker struggled to maintain order. He understood the humans' terms were fair, yet every Council member felt the sting of pride. They had miscalculated from the beginning, focusing on elite units while ignoring the real threat. Reports continued to flood in. Human special forces had completed their final operations. Council supply lines were permanently disrupted. Entire command posts were dismantled. Regular units held every key position, advancing where necessary and stabilizing where required. The Council could no longer claim victory anywhere. They had committed their strongest forces, and still the humans dictated the battlefield. The reality of defeat was undeniable. Council leaders begged for clarity. How could a species, supposedly small and inexperienced in galactic warfare, achieve such coordination? Analysts explained that humans had mastered patience, endurance, and strategy. They were not fighting for glory or rapid conquest. They were fighting for control, persistence, and inevitability. Special forces were never the main weapon. The regulars were. The Council had assumed the opposite, and now that assumption had cost them everything. In human command centers, officers watched Council fleets retreat or hold positions. They did not celebrate in triumph. There was no boast, no overt display of victory. Orders were given to stabilize zones, reinforce lines, and secure territories. Humanity had achieved a decisive position without excessive destruction. They had demonstrated superiority through strategy, discipline, and endurance. The lesson was written not in fire or corpses, but in the unbroken lines of their troops and the precise strikes of their special forces. Back in the council chamber, the High Speaker finally addressed the assembly. He admitted the truth. Humans had been underestimated. Their strength had been ignored. The council had assumed elite units were the threat, while the regulars held the real power. Their mistake had been catastrophic. Peace was requested not because the council was wise, but because humanity dictated the terms of survival. Every officer, soldier, and advisor understood the full weight of this admission. It was a rare moment of clarity amid defeat. When negotiations began, humans remained calm, precise, and unyielding in principle. They demanded recognition and respect, not tribute or gifts. They wanted the council to acknowledge that their regular troops were not expendable, that endurance and strategy were as dangerous as elite warriors. The council agreed, their pride wounded but their lives spared. They signed the accords quietly, understanding that their power had been checked not by luck or chance, but by human planning and discipline. As the negotiations concluded, the galaxy watched the humans return home. Their fleets withdrew, their special forces receded, and regular soldiers marched back to their worlds. No one cheered. No one feared openly. Humanity had taught the council a lesson in calm, unrelenting power. The war had ended, but the message was clear: humans were not to be underestimated. Special forces had been feared. Regulars had won. And the council would remember this truth for the rest of its history. The war had ended, though not in the way the Galactic Council had expected. Human fleets had withdrawn, special forces had returned to their hidden stations, and regular soldiers marched back to their home worlds. Yet the echo of their power remained across the galaxy. Entire council sectors had been reshaped, supply chains destroyed, command structures dismantled. The council had survived, but it was weakened, humiliated, and forever altered by the encounter. The lesson was written not in victories or losses alone, but in the realization of humanity's true nature. In the council chamber, leaders met again. There was silence for longer than anyone could remember. The High Speaker stared at maps of lost worlds, scattered fleets, and crippled resources. Advisors, generals, and analysts avoided eye contact. Every member felt the weight of their misjudgment. For decades, the council had classified threats based on elites and obvious power. They had assumed humans were small, weak, and manageable. Yet a single, disciplined species had demonstrated that true strength lay not only in extraordinary warriors, but in the ordinary soldiers who endured, adapted, and advanced with patience. Reports arrived from distant sectors. Council officers had begun to rebuild infrastructure, but every system carried scars of the human campaign. Entire cities had been evacuated or destroyed. Communication grids were fractured. Command posts were incomplete. Even the fleet that had withdrawn in retreat now required months of repair. The High Speaker listened quietly as each report was read. He understood that the galaxy had changed in ways that could not be reversed. Humanity had written a new rule: never underestimate the regulars. Beyond council space, human regular forces returned quietly to Earth. There were no celebrations, no grand speeches, no parades. Soldiers cleaned equipment, repaired weapons, and resumed daily routines. For them, the mission had been simple: follow orders, endure, advance. Yet the galaxy had witnessed the result of their discipline. Humble soldiers had broken the confidence of the greatest interstellar empire. The humans did not revel in glory. They had acted with purpose, showing restraint and efficiency while leaving a permanent mark on history. Human special forces reported to their stations, ready for future operations. Their role had never been to fight the main force. They were precise, disciplined, and terrifyingly effective at key points, but their power alone was meaningless without the foundation built by the regulars. Humanity had demonstrated that victory was not always measured in sudden decisive strikes, but in endurance, patience, and planning. The galaxy now understood that humans fought differently, and that difference was unstoppable when executed with unity. Within the council, fear remained, though it had softened into grudging respect. Analysts debated for hours, trying to understand how humans had achieved such coordination. Strategy experts revised doctrines, attempting to account for the human method of warfare. Generals studied every report and every battlefield detail. They concluded that no single technology, fleet, or elite unit could dominate a species whose soldiers moved as one, who endured beyond expected limits, and who struck precisely when the enemy was unprepared. A historian in the council chambers quietly summarized the event. Humans had shown the galaxy that courage, endurance, and coordination could surpass traditional measures of power. Special forces had been feared, yet it was the regulars who determined the outcome. Humanity's strength was not flashy or immediate. It was patient, relentless, and ultimately decisive. Every world, every fleet, every council member now understood the depth of that truth. The council's surviving fleets slowly returned to their bases, humbled. Fleet commanders were forced to report on their failures. Officers admitted to misjudgments in public records. Protocols were rewritten. The galaxy began to whisper about humanity, about the species that had defied every expectation and defeated the greatest empire not through spectacular force, but through discipline, patience, and strategic endurance. The Council had learned, too late, that they had underestimated the wrong enemy. Back on Earth, humans did not wait for accolades. Regular soldiers resumed training. Supplies were inventoried. Plans were reviewed quietly. The lessons were clear: endurance was strength, strategy was power, and unity was unstoppable. Special forces remained elite, ready for precise operations, but the galaxy now knew that the real danger lay not in elites, but in the countless ordinary humans moving together with purpose and patience. The Council's mistake had been to focus on heroes, ignoring the foundation that made them possible. As stars shone across the galaxy, a new story spread quietly among distant worlds. Humans had defeated an empire not with arrogance or raw force, but with methodical persistence. The Council had feared elites. They should have feared humanity itself. Regular soldiers, advancing calmly, enduring hardships, and coordinating flawlessly, had rewritten the rules of war. History books would record the events, but the real lesson was written in the stars, in every fleet that moved in line, every soldier that endured, and every strategy executed with patience. The galaxy had witnessed the rise of a species that could not be measured by standard metrics. Special forces had appeared, but it was the humans themselves, steady, enduring, and relentless, who had truly conquered the Council's fear. And that lesson would never be forgotten.